Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at role models,
Okay.
um, and specifically for students who are underrepresented in medicine.
Right.
Now, when we say underrepresented in medicine,
Yeah.
we often shorten that to UREM. We're
Mm.
talking about, individuals from groups who face, systemic barriers to entering and succeeding in medicine, like
Hmm.
those from racial and ethnic minorities, lower socioeconomic backgrounds, or who are first-generation college students.
Yeah, those are some great examples.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the hurdles that these individuals often face on their journey to becoming medical professionals.
Absolutely. And to really dig into this, we'll be looking at this research study from BMC Medical Education.
Okay.
And in this study, researchers interviewed 10 successful UREM alumni
Right.
from a Dutch medical school to understand their experiences with role models.
Interesting.
So what stood out to you as particularly interesting about this study?
Well, right off the bat, I was really intrigued by how the alumni defined a role model.
It wasn't as simple as we might initially think.
Yeah.
Their perspectives really highlight how subjective and dynamic the whole concept of a role model can be.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, many alumni emphasize the role of social comparison.
Okay.
They talked about seeing themselves reflected in their role models,
Uh-huh.
recognizing shared backgrounds, experiences, and values.
So it's not just about admiring somebody from afar, but about seeing a possibility for yourself in their journey.
Exactly. It's about that feeling of, if they can do it, maybe I can too.
Right.
And it's interesting because this feeling of connection often changed as the alumni themselves grew and changed.
Yeah.
Their role models evolved alongside their own personal and professional development.
That really resonates with me.
Right.
I think we've all had those figures in our lives who were incredibly influential at one point,
Mm,
but maybe don't hold the same significance now.
absolutely. One alumnus even said something like,
Yeah.
as your own norms and values change, your role models can change too. It highlights that the concept of a role model isn't static. It's a fluid relationship that shifts along with our own experiences and perspectives.
Now, one of the most surprising findings in this study was the hesitancy many alumni felt when discussing role models.
Hmm.
They seemed almost uncomfortable with the concept.
Yeah, that was definitely a thought-provoking observation.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, some felt that the term role model was too grand or imposing,
Hmm.
while others said it was such an unconscious process for them that they hadn't consciously thought about it before.
It's almost as if identifying a specific person as a role model felt too definitive for them,
Yeah.
like they were boxing themselves in.
Possibly, and there's another layer to this.
Okay.
Some alumni felt more comfortable discussing negative role models,
Interesting.
those doctors that they absolutely did not want to emulate.
Oh, wow.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Almost as if it was easier to define their path by what they wanted to avoid.
That's a really interesting point. It suggests that negative experiences or observations can be just as influential,
Hmm.
at least in shaping one's professional aspirations.
Precisely. And it highlights how complex the relationship between individuals and their sources of inspiration can be, especially within a demanding field like medicine.
Now, despite that initial hesitation,
Mm,
the alumni did eventually identify individuals who had served as role models for them during their time in medical school.
okay.
But here's the unexpected part. These role models often came from outside the world of medicine.
Yes, that was one of the most compelling findings to me. You might assume that medical students would primarily look up to their professors or doctors they encountered during clinical rotations.
Yeah, for sure.
But that wasn't always the case.
In fact, parents were cited far more frequently than anyone from within the medical profession.
That's right. I was particularly struck by one alumnus who spoke about their immigrant mother.
Okay.
Her strength and resilience in the face of significant challenges were a huge motivating factor for this individual. It speaks to the profound influence that personal experiences and connections can have on our aspirations.
It's a reminder that those everyday heroes in our lives often provide the most powerful lessons.
Exactly. And it challenges our assumptions about where we typically look for inspiration.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's not always about finding those larger-than-life figures. Maybe it's about recognizing the extraordinary in the seemingly ordinary.
So we're seeing that the source of inspiration for these URM alumni was much broader than we might anticipate. And it goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
The idea of having a single perfect role model didn't resonate with many of them.
Nice.
Instead, they described a more multifaceted approach,
Yeah.
almost like creating a mosaic of role models.
I find that fascinating.
What do you think about this concept?
Well, instead of looking for one person who embodies all the qualities they admire,
Yeah,
these alumni drew inspiration from a diverse array of individuals.
right.
They might admire a doctor's clinical skills, a professor's teaching style, and a family member's work ethic, for example.
So they're piecing together an ideal from different sources,
Ah,
drawing on the strengths and attributes that resonate with them most.
precisely. And this mosaic approach might stem in part from the lack of representation that many URM students encounter in medical schools.
That's a great point. Let's talk about representation and its significance,
Okay.
because it was a recurrent theme throughout the study.
It's crucial, especially for URM students.
Right.
They emphasized how important it was for them to see individuals who shared similar backgrounds, values, and experiences, and particularly ethnicity represented in their role models.
Yeah.
One participant even mentioned, you're more likely to take someone's word if they have a similar background as you.
It speaks to the power of feeling seen and understood,
Right.
of recognizing yourself in someone else's story. It's that if they can do it, so can I feel it.
Exactly.
But on the flip side, the study also revealed that the lack of ethnic diversity within the medical school had a tangible impact on some of the alumni. They spoke about feeling excluded, facing bias, and encountering obstacles in their development.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about feeling unseen or unheard. It had real consequences.
Right.
One alumnus even shared a story about being denied a residency position, specifically because of their background.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It really highlights the importance of representation, not just for validation and belonging, but for creating a fair and equitable playing field for everyone.
It's about ensuring that opportunities are truly accessible to all, regardless of background or identity.
Now, this leads us to another intriguing distinction raised in the research.
Okay.
The concept of behavioral versus symbolic value in role models.
This is a key point to unpack.
Yeah.
When we talk about behavioral value, we're referring to the tangible skills and behaviors a person might learn by observing their role model.
Gotcha.
Think of it as learning through observation and modeling.
Okay.
For instance, watching a surgeon perform a complex procedure and absorbing their techniques.
So it's that practical how-to aspect of learning from someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But symbolic value goes beyond concrete skills.
Okay.
It's about the intangible impact of seeing someone who shares your identity or background achieve success.
It's that inspiration and boost of confidence that comes from seeing possibility reflected in someone like you.
Precisely. And what the study revealed is that while URM alumni often gained a lot of behavioral value from role models within medical school,
Okay.
observing procedures, learning clinical skills, they often lack that symbolic value because of the absence of diverse representation among faculty and staff.
So even though they were learning the necessary skills, they weren't always seeing themselves reflected in the leaders and mentors around them.
Exactly. And that missing piece, that lack of symbolic value, speaks volumes about the need for greater diversity and inclusion within medical education.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking discussion so far.
Yeah.
It's really challenged my assumptions about role models and their impact.
Mine too, and I think this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
We still have a lot to unpack as we delve further into the implications of these findings and what they mean for the future of medical education.
It seems like this research is really kind of turning things on their head about how we think about role models.
Right.
It's not just about, finding that one perfect person that we want to try to be like, but about, recognizing all those different sources of inspiration,
Yeah.
especially for URM students who may not always see themselves represented in those traditional medical settings.
You've hit on a crucial point.
Yeah.
I mean, this study really highlights how important representation is in fostering a sense of, belonging and possibility, particularly within a field like medicine that has historically struggled with diversity.
So we've talked about how role models can be subjective and dynamic, the hesitancy some URM alumni felt in discussing them, the fascinating mosaic approach they used, and the critical distinction between behavioral and symbolic value. It's clear that role models play a complex and nuanced role in shaping the experiences of aspiring medical professionals, wouldn't you say?
Right. Absolutely. And what strikes me is how these findings challenge us to think differently about the environments we create within medical education.
I'm curious to hear more about that. What are some of the implications of this research for medical schools and those who are training the next generation of physicians?
Well, one of the key takeaways for me is the urgent need for medical schools to foster more inclusive and diverse learning environments. It's not enough to simply have diverse students. We need diversity among faculty and staff as well.
So that students from all backgrounds can find those sources of both behavioral and symbolic value.
Exactly.
It's about seeing yourself reflected in those who are teaching, mentoring, and leading in the field.
Think about the power of a URM student seeing a surgeon who looks like them successfully leading a complex operation,
Wow, yeah.
or a researcher from a similar background making groundbreaking discoveries. It's about sending a clear message that they belong, that their perspectives are valued and their dreams are attainable.
It goes beyond just feeling seen. It's about tangible opportunities and a level playing field. This research has given us a lot to consider on a personal level, too.
Yes, I think one of the most thought-provoking aspects of this research is the challenge it poses for all of us, whether we're in medicine or any other field.
Right.
It makes you ask, what can I do to be a source of support and inspiration for others, particularly those who might not always see themselves represented?
It's a powerful question, isn't it? It makes you think about the ways we can be more intentional about mentorship, amplifying underrepresented voices, and simply being an ally.
And it's a reminder that we can all be role models in our own way, regardless of our titles or accomplishments. Sometimes the most meaningful impact comes from small acts of encouragement, support, and simply sharing our own journeys authentically.
You've touched on something really important there, the idea that role models don't have to be these larger-than-life figures who have it all figured out.
Right, and this research really drives that point home. The alumni didn't describe their role models as perfect or flawless. Instead, they appreciated their resilience, their willingness to learn and grow, and their commitment to making a difference.
So maybe it's less about trying to emulate someone perfectly and more about recognizing the shared humanity in their journey.
I think that's a beautiful way to frame it. It's about recognizing that we're all constantly learning and evolving, and even those we admire have faced challenges and sought out support along the way.
It's about embracing the complexities of the human experience and recognizing that role models, just like the rest of us, are constantly in progress.
Exactly. And this takes us beyond the traditional, often idealized view of what a role model should be. It opens up the possibility for all of us to find inspiration in unexpected places and to recognize the potential we each have to positively impact others.
This conversation has given me a lot to ponder. It's challenged my assumptions about where role models come from and the many ways they can shape our lives. And I love the idea that creating a more equitable and inclusive society, whether in medicine or any other field, is a shared responsibility. It's about recognizing our own biases, challenging those systems that perpetuate inequality, and actively working to create opportunities for those who have been marginalized.
I couldn't agree more. It's a continuous journey of self-reflection, action, and collaboration.
And as we continue this deep dive, I'm curious to explore what this all means for our own roles in shaping a more inclusive and equitable world. We've unpacked the research and explored its implications. What do you think listeners should take away from this conversation so far? What's resonating with you?
What's really sticking with me is this whole, like flipping the script thing.
Okay.
We've been talking about, finding role models, these people who inspire us.
Mm-hmm.
But what if each, focused on being that source of inspiration for somebody else?
What if we challenge ourselves to be that person who makes somebody feel seen, heard, and believed in, especially someone who, may not see themselves represented in positions of success?
I love that it's a powerful challenge, and it builds on something we've kind of touched on throughout this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
This idea that, role models don't have to be these perfect finished products.
Right.
They can be people who are still, figuring things out, still learning and growing, just like everyone else.
Exactly. And think about the impact that can have,
Yeah.
particularly for URM students or anyone from an underrepresented background. If they see someone who looks like them, who shares their experiences navigating challenges and succeeding in a field where they might feel like an outsider,
Right.
it can be transformative.
It can change what they believe is possible for themselves.
It reinforces that sense of belonging and possibility that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that we all have the potential to be role models, regardless of our titles or achievements.
Right.
We can make a positive impact just by being authentic, by sharing our own journeys openly,
Yeah.
and by championing those around us.
Yeah.
That really speaks to the heart of what we've been exploring today. It's not just about finding those sources of inspiration for ourselves.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we can all be that source for somebody else.
That's a great point.
And sometimes, the most powerful role models aren't those who stand on a pedestal,
Right.
but those who walk alongside us offer in support and encouragement every step of the way.
Beautifully said. And it brings us back to this core idea of creating a more inclusive and equitable society.
Yeah.
It's a collective effort. It's about recognizing that our actions, no matter how small they may seem, can have a ripple effect
Hmm.
and contribute to creating a world where, you know, everyone has the opportunity to thrive, whether it's mentoring someone, amplifying marginalized voices, or simply being an ally. Each of us has a role to play.
This deep dive has been packed with insights. I have a feeling we'll be thinking about these findings long after the episode is over. We've explored the subjective and dynamic nature of role models, the challenges URM students face in finding representation, that fascinating mosaic approach they often adopt, and the critical distinction between behavioral and symbolic value.
It's been a great discussion.
We've also touched on the responsibility we all share in creating a more inclusive world where everyone can find those sources of inspiration and support.
I think this conversation has given us all a lot to reflect on.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that the conversation about role models and representation and conclusivity is ongoing. It's something we need to continue to, explore, challenge ourselves on, and actively work towards in our daily lives.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay,
We've talked a lot about finding role models.
right.
But what can you do to be a source of symbolic value for someone else? Who can you lift up? Whose voice can you amplify? How can you use your own experiences and platform to inspire and empower others?
Those are powerful questions to consider, and I hope this deep dive has inspired all of us to think more deeply about the roles we can play in creating a world where everyone feels seen, valued, and empowered to reach their full potential.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of role models in medical education. It's been a fascinating exploration, and we hope it's given you some food for thought as you continue on your own journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep inspiring.